Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host here,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome to 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. We are so glad that you came and joined us today. What is going on in the world of music and news today, Mr. Cruz?
Drama upon drama upon drama.
You know I love drama. drama.
Well, first, let our listeners and viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music tonight, but we're your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. All right, first up out of the gate, you know, in the name of the streaming wars, we always say streaming wars here at the Freedom Radio Hour because we're talking about the streaming services that want your dollar, not once, but every month. We're talking about services like Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, and the like, right? So the music community has been coming for each individual streaming service over time. First, they kind of came for Pandora and the way that they paid royalties to artists. They came for Spotify and how Spotify pays their artists. And now they're coming for YouTube, the biggest online outlet there is, pretty much. If you think about it now, in terms of the free, these are the services that you don't have to pay for at all. The biggest site there is for that is YouTube. I mean, right now, you and I both, I don't know about you, but my account for YouTube has been around for years.
Yes.
I've been looking up content for years. I really go down a rabbit hole sometimes, checking out live concerts, for example. But YouTube, not to be outdone by the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime now, are all trying to create original content. So YouTube is here to stay. Problem is that YouTube has come under fire recently because artists like Katy Perry, Pharrell Williams, and Billy Joel are fighting against them by signing a letter that asks for change with the Copyright Act. That's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But we got to go a little bit further back to the beginning of the drama. Let's go further back. So in 2012, there was this act called SOPA. That's the Stop Online.
SOPA!
I know, right? It sounds like in Spanish.
A dish or something.
No, this is Spanish. Sopa is soup.
Oh, soupa.
A soup.
But what's the one when you do the dance? Soupa.
Oh, no, I think you mean opa. That's like, that's.
Okay, we're
if we
sorry.
if we were Greek, that would be that saying, yeah? But SOPA, which is Stop Online Piracy Act, was introduced as a possibility now in 2012. What it said was the following. It was trying to change the way U.S. Law enforced the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. In short, it was really controversial back in 2012 for a few reasons.
Basically, how much money they would give.
No, it's how they enforced people that infringed the copyright.
Okay.
All right. So the biggest problem was the number one, it bypassed the Safe Harbor Act. That's the provision, rather. That's a provision that says that if you're a site like YouTube, like Facebook, like Twitter, and you allow for user uploaded content, it protects them against any infringement claims. In a sense, it says you have to go and chase the person who put the material up. You can't chase us, YouTube, Twitter, or YouTube, or Google, or whoever we are, by hosting it. So don't come for us, come for the person who put it up. That's what the Safe Harbor provision said.
Now, you know, again, when we look back into the past, wasn't a woman taken to court some years back because of something like that, and she was like charged with a felony?
Yeah, and it got crazy because what happens is when the community,
she was posting the content,
right? And they use these moments where they spotlight, the media spotlights like a case where once in New York a 12-year-old girl was taken to jail or sued for all this money because of content that she was sharing online. This was back in the peer-to-peer days, like Napster and stuff. But what you're talking about is not unlike that, where they start to make examples out of citizens to make a broader point against piracy. I think it's time for a little break. We're going to come back soon, but what I want to talk about is what SOPA, furthermore, what SOPA did, the controversy, what finally put the nail on the coffin, because it did die out and never really came to pass, and what that means for this fight against YouTube. Where? Oh. I gotcha.
Yeah, he got me. 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan.
Freedom Radio Hour, y'all.
Freedom Radio.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people? I'm Eddie Nicholas, and we'd like to welcome you back to 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. I'm here with my good buddy, Mr.
Adam Cruz, and we're live and direct right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were talking about some history in terms of these acts, these legislations that are coming up in the U.S. SOPA in 2012, short for Stop Online Piracy Act, was proposed in 2012 to broaden enforcement of the U.S. Copyright Act. That's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA for short.
All these acronyms.
Yes, I know, I can't. So basically what it says was it bypassed the Safe Harbor Act, so it put the onus on any infringible content on the likes of YouTube, Twitter, Google, and YouTube. And they were up in arms, as you can imagine, because this SOPA Act basically bypassed that Safe Harbor provision.
Well, how was that possible if the provision was already in place?
Because they're arguing, the SOPA argued that they wanted to broaden enforcement, so they bypassed that need to basically create this aggressive enforcement policy. In short, they would do things like if you were a first-time offender, you could be jailed for 5 years.
Craziness.
Also, if you were a public library, by virtue of having any sort of material that was electronically transmitted, like consider audiobooks, you were jeopardizing or you were possibly in breach of this law. Furthermore, it put the onus on any search engine, so Google, anybody, that by virtue of having content that was appearing in a search engine, you can click it and view it. That made Google liable. So it created a big problem. It was so much controversy that finally it died down and didn't come to pass for obvious reasons. It was a huge public outcry. But to your point, many times in previous episodes here, you always make mention of the fact that we don't have a strong enough lobby as a music industry to make the changes that we see fit. So that was back in 2012. Moving forward, like I was talking about, before we broke, we were talking about artists like Katy Perry, Billy Joel, and Pharrell Williams that are coming forward, signing letters, asking for changes to this law. In particular, they're saying that the language is outdated and it makes it really hard to remove content. Okay, so we know about takedown notices, right? That's if I put up something that Eddie thinks that I infringe upon his copyright, there's a little button on my little video that I posted where it says report. And you could create a takedown notice from that automatically. It's a bot. It's not a real person that takes the material down. It automatically comes down, and then they leave it to Eddie and I to then dispute it and get over it, right? And then we could re-put it up somewhere else if we wanted, and we have to deal with that. All right, so the problem here is now what you have is this problem where the content that's coming up. Wait, what was I talking about before? I felt like I just lost the train of thought. I know what I was talking about. I was talking about YouTube and what happened. So these artists are saying that first of all, you have to update the language around this so that you could deal with the technology. Also, what is up with YouTube's report that just came out that said that they pay $3 billion of royalties worldwide, but the U.S. saw 385 million of that. So essentially, let me repeat that. YouTube is saying for the U.S., they paid out last year $385 million on their free tier. This is not a subscription service. We're not talking about the $10 a month like to a Tidal or Spotify, for example. We're talking about strictly free. Like we have YouTube accounts, right? We can go up and search something.
And that's basically what the advertisers are paying to you.
Right. So out of that ad-supported tier, which is free to us, YouTube has paid $385 million last year to artists, which is a paltry amount. So the problem here is this: when you compare a niche market, let's say vinyl sales, and the U.S. Vinyl sales, in the terms of the perception, have been this dying market that was slowly going to its grave, right? Well, now, citing this problem with how much royalties are paid out from YouTube in this free tier, people are fighting back to say, look, man, in terms of the niche market of vinyl, that paid $416 million. So how is it that this little itty bitty niche market, vinyl, has paid more than the biggest juggernaut there is?
Yes, that's the word, juggernaut.
Yes, for the biggest juggernaut there is to host content, our own music, and we're only seeing $385 million last year of that. That's wrong. So these artists have come together to fight that. But this has been, what I'm trying to say here is that this has been an ongoing fight. It's a saga, as you say.
But especially with CSAC, BMI, ASCAP, and even the Grammys. Why have those organizations have not? You know, I see them because I'm a member of ASCAP. I see them put out little blurbs, and I need to be more involved in what's going on and all of that type of stuff. But those are the ones. Where is the lobby of all of them?
Well, I think part of what you're seeing is this dramatic change and the realization by big name artists, because forget the independent guys, we get squashed in terms of the big push from big time artists. We're talking Katy Perry, Pharrell Williams, Billy Joel. We're not talking smaller tier independent acts. So if they lobby, if enough of them get together, I think that's when you'll start to see some of the changes occur, because unfortunately the smaller voices on the independent front tend to be overlooked in favor of the Taylor Swifts or the Beyoncés of the world,
the Jay-Z's.
Yes, because why? Because they make the most money in the market. They have the biggest shares, if you will. So when they say boo, the industry jumps. When the independent guys say boo, the industry ignores. So what I believe is this is a good thing that's occurring. It's terrible that that YouTube, the biggest juggernaut there is paid $385 million to all artists in the U.S. last year. That's a terrible amount. However, I think that's good for us because it starts to pull the rug up and we sort of clean out the roaches, if you will, of the reality of what it is to be in the music game today. If you are an independent artist, can you imagine how much of that $385 million you saw? Probably next to nothing. So let's keep it real. You saw zero. Well, what we're trying to do here is keep everybody informed and all come together. Whenever you see a petition to sign, and if you, first of all, look to make sure that it's legit, because there is a lot of fake scams and such out there. So make sure that it's legitimate. But if it is, take a moment and ponder and see, especially around music business petitions. The RIAA is always offering opinions and surveys and such. That's the Recording Industry Association of America. Be endowed with them. To Eddie's point, be down with advocacy. We have to have a stronger lobby, and the way we do that is to come together. There's strength in numbers. That is the truth. Whether we're independents or like Beyonce, Taylor Swift's and them, they're coming together because they too see that if it were not their touring and merchandising and the other things, they would make little to nothing in the grand scheme of things. You know. So anyway, so let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a follow-up to our Kraftwerk story. You remember talking about in previous episodes how they went to court in Germany over a sample usage of their song Metal on Metal. It was like the tiniest little fraction. Well, that's come to pass in the U.S. We'll talk about that. I'll give you a little hint. Strike a pose.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan.
Freedom Radio Hour, y'all.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM. You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. I'm here with my fantastic co-host,
Eddie Nicholas. Boom, 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 boom.
Yes, we're striking a pose right here on the Freedom Radio Hour because we're talking about the de minimis rule. Check this out. One of our previous episodes, we were talking about the legendary electronic group Kraftwerk. They're out of Germany. So Kraftwerk for a long time has been suing these writers who released a record in 1997 that they felt was a clear sample of their song, Metal on Metal, that came out 20 years earlier in 1977. So Kraftwerk for a long time had been suing these two writers, alleging that they sampled portions of Kraftwerk's song, Metal on Metal. Well, we talked about in previous episodes how the German courts ruled in favor of the newer songwriters against Kraftwerk by saying that the sample that they used was so small that it's not infringible in terms of copyright. So you and I were side-eyeing the whole deal because we're like trying to figure out, first of all, what was the amount of time that we're talking, and what is the German court's belief about samples of these short times. We're not talking about and sometimes in house music you'll see like an original all the way through with just a little kick on top and a little faster. That's not what we're talking about. That's clearly copyright infringement if you did not clear that sample, for example. But what we're saying is a really, really tiny sample. Minuscule. What does that mean in terms of copyright protection? So it's so funny that we were talking about Germany because now it's reared its ugly head here in the U.S. You know that Madonna's Vogue came out and it had a little stab of a horn in the song. So when don't just stand there, let's get to it.
Strike a pose and let's get to it.
Bam! Right? That little horn hit was from a Soul Soul orchestra record entitled Ooh, I Love It, Love Break. Okay, so I used to kill that record. Love Break, I love break, love break. But
man, shout out to Soul Soul and Carol Williams, First Lady of Soul Soul.
Exactly.
Because I think her voice is that ooh la la.
Yeah, she's cool. Ooh. Yeah, exactly. She was killing it. So so that record has been the subject of an ongoing lawsuit against the publishers of Vogue, citing a copyright infringement over this horn hit that you hear in Love Break. So they have been going back since Vogue came out in the 80s or early 90s. They've been fighting that for years. Well, now it's gone back and forth to the point where they were in the middle of the appeals decision. The appeals decision was to say whether, in fact, a small sample like this could be liable in other words, is it infringing on copyright that the smallest, tiniest sample of Love Break was used in Vogue. So finally, just recently, this is what happened. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals made it easier for musicians to sample small portions of song recordings by giving Madonna, her producer, Robert Shep Pettibone, shout out to Shep Pettibone, a victory in a long-running lawsuit over the 1990 hit Vogue. The decision affirms a 2013 ruling by a California federal court that held on summary judgment that a 0.23 second sampling of a horn hit from the 1976 song called Love Break was de minimis, meaning small enough to be trivial. After listening to the audio, this is a quote, after listening to the audio recording submitted by the parties, we conclude that a reasonable juror could not conclude that an average audience would recognize the appropriation of the horn hit, end quote. What do you think?
The operative word
is what?
Average. Operative 2 words. Average audience.
Right. I get the average part because you and I are a little bit, advanced in terms of our ear. We can point out and hear that horn hit and know that sounds
because we grew up with the music.
Right. Or we knew someone who did and we were exposed to it, for example. But to your point, continue. Average audience
would not recognize it.
No.
And so therefore, if the average audience does not recognize it, who's to say, well, you got that from where? Because me as the average Joe Smell, I don't know where you got it from. All I know is this is something new that, it even exists today when you hear a lot of these remakes that these neo-soul young people are doing and the hip-hop artists are doing. When you hear Vivian Green songs.
Right. Blatant.
What was this, a groove thing?
Yes.
All right up in there. So it's like, oh my God, and that's more than a minuscule.
Right.
So,
and we're not, again, to remind our listeners and our viewers, we're not talking about those like obvious long samples so that if it's the main hook or main idea of a song, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the ittiest
blurb.
0.23 second sampling, which is this horn hit. I think it's very interesting. On the one hand, I believe that without de minimis rule, you wouldn't have hip-hop today because hip-hop used a lot of minuscule samples all in different successions.
But also, weren't many of them sued for those minuscules and paid?
That's right. They were sued
and paid.
And paid out. Yeah, had to pay out. So even in those moments, you have to be careful. But the U.S. is saying that finally that Shep Pettibone and Madonna can breathe a sigh of relief because you can't sue someone for the tiniest little sample because you can cite the de minimis rule that gets over. But I think this is going to be a problem because I'll be damned. If I'm in one of my records, I hear the ittiest bit of little sample, I'll know it and go, wait a minute, you just used my sample without clearing it. So this is all well and good if you're, say, an independent guy fighting a behemoth like a Madonna, right? Because you think, oh, why not? Artistic freedom. But if it were the shoe was on the other foot, I argue that we would be up in arms trying to figure out how to get money from it. So I'm not mad at this ongoing saga that is this lawsuit, because if I were the person who was trying to claim that I own that material and it was on a mega record like Vogue, I certainly would be suing.
Yes, I would want my just due, and I would want my do la 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 la
exactly.
la.
And I would go deeper. If I was the musician on that record and I was one who actually performed that horn break, I would be coming to
where my do la? What is Rihanna's song? Better have my money. Have my money.
Exactly. And that's all the time we have for today. We're going to break down more of this. We want to talk more about copyright and what's happening, the streaming wars. There's a lot to get to, as you can,
Yes,
as you
it
can
is.
tell. Thank you so much for tuning into the Freedom Radio Hour. By all means, visit our website at freedomradiohour.com. Leave a comment under all the posts. And we post a lot of these articles for you guys to become aware of. Follow us all over social media. Just search us out. EddieNicholas.com. The one-time single is out and it's fabulous. Go check it out. He has this Do You Want to Dance EP coming out in September. We got to let our listeners and our viewers know what the date is coming up. Also, yours truly, Adam Cruz. The Freedom album is available everywhere, including iTunes and TrackSource. Search me out. As Eddie always says, Google.
Yes. Stay in touch. Stay informed.
That's
Eddie
right.
Nicholas, Adam Cruz, 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. Peace out.
Have a good weekend, y'all. Peace.
Peace.